Tragedy strikes the Bates family. Tori Bates and Bobby Smith dead after car accident. It was a bright and peaceful morning in Tennessee. The sun had risen softly over the quiet hills, spreading a golden light across the Bates family's hometown. For most people it was just another day, ordinary, calm and simple. But for Tori Bates and her husband Bobby Smith, it would unknowingly become the last morning of their shared journey on this earth. The couple had always been known for their kindness, their love for family, and their steady faith in God. They were young but wise beyond their years, the kind of people who carried light wherever they went. Together they had built a beautiful life. Their days were filled with laughter, baby giggles, late-night talks, and endless prayers whispered before sleep. That morning the house was alive with the soft rhythm of family life. The children were playing in the living room, their voices echoing through the walls. Tori moved gently from room to room, organizing, smiling, doing the little things that made a home feel warm. She had always been the quiet heart of the family, someone who found beauty in the smallest details, who believed love could heal even the hardest days. Bobby, always the steady presence beside her, was making plans for the day. He was the kind of man who rarely spoke loudly, but his calm strength spoke for him. His love for Tori was clear in everything he did. The way he looked at her, the way he made sure she never carried too much alone, the way he always said, "We'll get through it," no matter what came their way. To their family, Tori and Bobby were more than just a couple, they were an example. They represented everything pure about love and faith. Their marriage had become a quiet inspiration, built not on perfection, but on patience and prayer. As the morning passed, they prepared to go out for a short drive. Nothing unusual, nothing planned with expectation, just a simple outing, the kind of drive they'd taken hundreds of times before. They said goodbye to the kids, who were staying with Kelly, Joe, and Gil for the day. There were hugs, laughter, and promises to be back soon. No one could have known that those words, "We'll be back soon," would echo so painfully later that day. The road stretched ahead, calm and open. The sky was clear, the air warm. Everything seemed peaceful, almost too perfect. In that silence, life felt whole, as if nothing could ever break it. But sometimes, life changes in the quietest moments. Sometimes the things we take for granted, a smile, a touch, a goodbye, become the last memory we have. And as that morning faded into afternoon, the world of the Bates family was about to change forever. The afternoon sun had settled gently over the Tennessee hills when Tori and Bobby began their short drive. It wasn't a long trip, just a quiet escape for a few hours, a chance to breathe away from the busy rhythm of parenting and daily life. They had done it countless times before. A peaceful drive through the winding country roads that felt like home. The road was familiar, the trees lining both sides heavy with late autumn leaves. The world seemed calm, soft, and alive in that gentle light. For Tori and Bobby it was a small pocket of peace. A rare, simple moment where the noise of the world faded away, and only love remained. As they drove, the car filled with soft music, the kind that holds memories. There was something sacred about that stillness, the way the sunlight touched the windshield, the rhythm of the tires against the road, the sense that life in that very moment was perfect. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. Years of love had made words unnecessary. Every silence between them felt full, complete, and understood. There was a quiet gratitude in the air, for the family they had built, the children waiting for them at home, the blessings that had shaped their lives. Around them, nature moved gently. The sky carried streaks of gold and pink as evening slowly approached. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rang, its soft sound floating through the valley. In another world, life went on as usual. People passed by, unaware that something irreversible was about to happen. Somewhere, a mother was preparing dinner. Somewhere else, a child was laughing. But on that small road in Tennessee, destiny had begun to write a different story. As the car continued forward, time seemed to slow down. The world felt lighter, quieter, almost like the air was holding its breath. There was no warning, no sign, no hint of what was coming. Just a brief moment of peace before the sound that would change everything. It happened in an instant, too fast for anyone to see, too loud to ever forget. A sudden glare of light, the screech of tires, a flash of metal against metal. The calm road erupted into chaos. The wind carried the sound for miles, then silence returned, the kind of silence that leaves a scar. When help arrived, the road was quiet again. The car rested at the side of the highway, surrounded by shattered glass and twisted steel. The song that had been playing moments ago still whispered from the broken radio, soft, trembling, unfinished. Somewhere far away, their children were still laughing at their grandparents' house, waiting for their parents to come home. Evening had just started to fall over the hills of Tennessee when the call came through. The light outside was turning soft and golden, touching the Bates family's home with its usual warmth. Inside, the children were still playing, their laughter echoing down the hallways, innocent, unaware. At first, it was just another quiet evening. Kelly Joe was in the kitchen, tidying up after dinner. Gil was sitting by the window, flipping through his Bible, something he did every evening. The house felt safe, ordinary, peaceful, the kind of peace that comes only before a storm. Then the phone rang. No one ever forgets a phone call like that. It comes without warning, without mercy. Kelly Joe answered, expecting a familiar voice. Maybe Tori checking in, maybe Bobby saying they were on their way back. But the voice on the other end was not one she recognized. It trembled. It hesitated. And then in a single sentence it shattered her world. Time seemed to stop. The words hung in the air, heavy and unreal. The sound of the children playing faded in the distance, replaced by silence, the kind that makes the heart forget how to beat. Gil looked up, his face turning pale as he saw Kelly drop the phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The next few moments were a blur. Shock, disbelief, desperate questions with no answers. Gil's eyes filled with tears, but he stayed still, holding Kelly as she cried. A sound so deep it seemed to come from the soul. Within hours the news spread. One by one the Bates children heard. Zach was the first to arrive. Then Lawson, then Aaron, each of them broken in their own way. There were no words, only embraces that spoke everything language could not. The house that had always been full of laughter now felt heavy, almost silent, except for the soft sobs that refused to stop. Outside, night had fallen completely. The stars began to appear, small cold lights over a world that suddenly felt empty. The family sat together in the living room, holding one another as memories flooded in. Tori's gentle voice, Bobby's calm smile, the countless moments that made up their lives. Somewhere in the corner, one of the children asked when their parents would be coming home. No one could answer. Kelly took the child in her arms and whispered something only a mother could say. A sentence made of love and unbearable loss. In the hours that followed, the Bates home became a place of prayers and tears. People from the church arrived. Friends came quietly, bringing flowers, candles, food, things that couldn't fix anything, but somehow showed love. The whole town seemed to mourn with them. That night, Gil went outside and stood on the porch alone. The cold air brushed against his face. He looked up at the stars, so still, so far, and whispered a prayer he could barely finish. He thanked God for every year Tori and Bobby had been alive, and asked for the strength to go on without them. The night stretched endlessly. The world outside continued. Cars passed, lights flickered, the wind moved through the trees, but for the Bates family time stood still. The next morning would come, but nothing would ever be the same again. The morning of the funeral arrived quietly, without color. The sky over Tennessee was pale gray, heavy with clouds that refused to move. The wind was slow, almost hesitant, as if even nature understood that this was not a day for noise or light. By sunrise, the Bates home had already filled with people. Family, friends, church members, neighbors. All came silently, carrying flowers, folded hands, and heavy hearts. No one spoke much. Words felt too small, too fragile to hold the weight of such loss. Inside the house, everything was still. The walls that had once echoed with laughter now held only the soft sounds of weeping. Photographs rested on every table. Tori and Bobby smiling, holding their children, living moments that had ended too soon. Each picture felt alive, as if time itself refused to let go of them. The children were dressed in white, their faces calm and confused. They didn't fully understand what had happened. They asked simple questions, the kind that broke every heart in the room, questions with no real answers. Kelly Joe stayed close to them, her hands trembling as she tried to be strong, to smile through tears that never stopped. The church bells began to ring in the distance. Slowly, the family made their way to the chapel, the same one where Tori and Bobby had once stood years ago, hand in hand, promising to love each other forever. That promise, everyone believed, had not been broken. It had simply moved beyond this world. The service began quietly. The pastor's voice was low, steady, filled with sorrow and faith. He spoke of love, of heaven, of how death cannot separate what God has joined. But even as he spoke, the grief in the room was overwhelming. Waves of emotion that came and went like the tide, leaving behind silence each time they passed. Outside, the air smelled faintly of rain. Birds flew across the sky, small and distant, as if carrying pieces of the family's prayers upward. The world kept turning, but for those sitting in that church, time felt frozen, locked in a moment of goodbye that no one was ready for. When it was over, people moved slowly. No one wanted to leave. Some stood near the front, looking at the flowers and photographs, touching the edges of frames as if that could bring them closer. Others held each other quietly, tears sliding down their faces without a sound. At the cemetery, the family stood together, close, trembling, hearts breaking but still united. The youngest child reached for Gil's hand and held it tightly. Kelly Jo looked up at the sky and whispered a prayer that no one heard, a prayer made only of love and pain. There was no speech, no grand farewell. Just the wind moving through the trees, and the sound of leaves falling one by one, soft, gentle, endless. People began to leave, but the Bates family stayed. They stood by the two resting places, surrounded by flowers and silence. It wasn't just goodbye to Tori and Bobby, it was a goodbye to a part of themselves, a piece of their world that would never return. As the sun began to set, a faint light broke through the clouds. It touched the graves gently, turning the gray sky golden for a moment, like a quiet sign, a reminder that love does not end where life does. When the family finally walked back toward their cars, the air felt different, not lighter, not healed, but calm. Somewhere in that silence there was peace. The days after the funeral moved like slow shadows, quiet, heavy, and endless. The Bates family's home, once filled with the sound of laughter and music, now echoed with a stillness that felt almost sacred. Every room carried a memory. Every corner whispered a name. The first morning without them was the hardest. Kelly Jo woke before sunrise the way she always did, but this time there was no reason to hurry. She walked into the kitchen, and the sight of the empty chairs broke her all over again. She stood there for a long time, her hands pressed against the counter, eyes closed, trying to find strength in silence. Gil tried to stay strong for everyone. He moved quietly through the house, fixing small things, helping the children, holding Kelly whenever the weight became too much. But even he couldn't escape the emptiness. Sometimes, late at night, he would step outside onto the porch and look at the sky. The stars above seemed brighter now, as if two new lights had joined them. The older children visited often. Aaron brought flowers. Lawson played soft hymns on his guitar, though even he couldn't finish a song without tears. Zach stayed late taking care of the younger ones. Michaela helped Kelly sort through Tori's belongings. Each item a memory too painful to hold, yet too precious to give away. Days turned into weeks. The rhythm of life began to return, but it wasn't the same rhythm as before. The sound of laughter when it came felt quieter. The smiles were gentler, touched with sadness. The family prayed together every night. Their hands joined tightly as they whispered the same words again and again. Words of gratitude, faith, and longing. The children, too young to understand loss, began asking fewer questions. But sometimes, in the middle of playing, one of them would stop, look up at the sky, and smile for no reason. Kelly would watch quietly from a distance, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. The town of Rocky Top mourned with them. Church members visited with food, neighbors left flowers at their door, and letters arrived from people all across the country. Strangers who had watched the Bates family for years, who felt like they had lost someone of their own. In one letter a woman wrote, "Even in their passing, Tori and Bobby reminded us how beautiful love can be. They showed us that faith is not about never falling. It's about standing again after the fall." Those words stayed with Kelly. She read them over and over, each time finding new meaning in them. Slowly, the family began to rebuild. Not by forgetting, but by remembering differently. They planted 2 oak trees in the front yard. One for Tori, one for Bobby, side by side, their roots buried deep in the same soil. Every morning, sunlight filtered through their leaves, scattering golden patterns on the ground like blessings. On Sundays, the family gathered at church. The pews where Tori and Bobby once sat remained empty, decorated with fresh white flowers. The pastor never mentioned them by name anymore. He didn't need to. Their presence lingered quiet but strong, in every hymn, every prayer, every act of kindness that followed. Months passed. Seasons changed. The pain softened, but it never disappeared. It simply became a part of them, woven into every laugh, every hug, every prayer they said. And through it all, faith remained. Not loud, not certain, but steady. The kind of faith that doesn't erase grief, but holds it gently, reminding everyone that love is stronger than loss. Some nights when the wind passed through the trees outside, the family would hear it, a soft sound almost like laughter. Maybe it was the leaves, maybe the breeze, or maybe something beyond this world.